long time ago in a galaxy almost far, far away, four makers unite in order to share and discuss their maker knowledge and some interesting topics along the way. Join us as we light the spark that brings back your childhood in the Almost Star Wars show!
Hey guys, we're back again for another episode of the Almost Star Wars Show. I'm James from the Rebel Base Build, and as always, I'm here with my friends.
Ron, otherwise known as CG Artist.
Dennis with the Black Market Outpost.
And Brian with the Smuggler's Room.
And oh my God, I am trying not to be too excited. We have just come off the back of all 6 episodes of Andor now. So we've seen both of the 3 episode arcs. I mean, it's insane. I don't know what to say about it. It's just brilliant for so many different reasons, but we've all got so much to talk about tonight. And the topic, therefore, is, because it's so controversial right now, what is Star Wars? So, Brian, I think you're going to kick us off on this one. Let's hear it.
I've been a little obsessed lately about this. And it's one of those topics that I think it's come up over the years, especially in the Star Wars Room Builders group and when people are doing different design work and all that kind of thing. And with Andor coming out, there's been a lot of conversation from fans. And if you go through any social media posts about it, pretty much anywhere, you're going to see the most division among fans that I've seen in a long time. You'll see one person will say, it's the greatest show ever. And the next one is say, it's the most horrible thing I've ever seen. And in a lot of all of that mixed in, there are comments of people saying, it doesn't look like Star Wars, or they've got AK-47s in there and that's not a blaster. And the list goes on with things that are polarizing. And it got me questioning, well, what is it that makes something Star Wars? And I think that's a great question for all 4 of us to try to answer in our own way, because I guarantee that at least the 4 of us probably have a different view, or there's something specific about Star Wars that makes something feel like it's from that universe. And so I'll give you my little tidbit of what I think draws me in, and then I just want all four of us to discuss that. When I look at Andor from a visuals perspective, there are a lot of iconic things that tell me where I'm at. There's control panels on walls. There's random greeblies that are scattered throughout different scenes. Even when it comes to areas where they're at, like with the Imperial outpost on the dam, it's a dam, you can tell. And then there's just little bits and pieces that they've added to it.
Yeah.
That for me is literally enough to sell me on the universe I'm watching. And I'm curious what it is that helps sell that for you guys, or does Andor not sell that for you at all, which would be interesting as well.
I think it sells it for me a lot, exactly as what you're saying. And I think, I don't want to say that it's been stereotyped, but I think people are just so used to what was the past, right? There's so many places that haven't been explored. There's so many. Did anybody up until yesterday know that there were people out there who still live like it's, some tribe from a third world country? Absolutely not.
Short
right?
of Ewoks, right?
Right. Short of Ewoks, which are a creature, but we're talking a human form now, right?
Yeah.
There's so many places that haven't been explored and can be explored, and you never know what's out there. I mean, a brick is a brick, right? It could be Star Warsy, or it could be Earth, or anything like that.
Did that the brick on the buildings, did that take you out of it?
I don't think it took me out of it, because was it a brick? Yes, it was a brick, but everything around it put you back in that universe, right? Or in that setting, I should say. I mean, a building is built out of whatever material it is. We don't know what's out there.
Sure.
It's unexplored. We've been, for 30 years, you've been dealing with a handful of characters, right? 15, 20, 25 characters, all from a handful of planets.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're starting to see, like, here's a scenario that I thought about a lot today, actually. In Star Wars, when they're in the room planning the Death Star attack, right? There's a ton of faces in the background. Nobody knows who they are or where they're from or what their house is made out of.
Right.
This is the avenue to to explore those people and those avenues and learn what's on a planet you haven't been to yet. And it can be, I keep going back to the brick, but it can be the brick. It can be the simple lantern from Harbor Freight. It can be the, ship that's just a basic box with some windows and a door.
I got a question for you, Dennis, and this is one I wanted to ask you specifically about. In some of our random conversations that we have during the week,
Right.
somewhere in that thread, there was a comment or something made that, the Force, Jedi, all of those things make Star Wars.
Right.
So I would love it if you kind of would elaborate on that, because I've seen that feedback from other people as well.
It makes it Star Wars as we know it, right? But again, think of the timeline we're in right now.
Sure.
Technically, that's all supposed to be eliminated as far as we know, right? Inquisitors, Jedi, Force, all that supposed to be eliminated. We don't know what's out there. Again, we're exploring. Do I feel that one should pop up in Andor? I don't know. It's not really necessary. But it's not to say that there's not one out there hiding, right?
Sure. Yeah, of course.
So, I mean, in the major picture of it, the Force, the Jedis, all that is Star Wars. But it's not completely necessary for these. I feel like Andor is like a very small story in a big world.
Yeah, microscopic view.
Right.
Yeah, so, I mean, they're in it. They're living on a junkyard planet. How many Jedi do you know that are going to hang out on a junkyard planet unless they're hiding? And if they're hiding, you're not going to know they're a Jedi or use the Force or anything like that.
Right. I 100% agree with you. And I'll shut up here in a second, but I wanted to point one thing out. I was having this conversation yesterday specifically with a fan of pretty much all of our shows. And they were a little angry with me about thinking Andor was Star Wars and arguing the point that they needed the Force and Jedi and Sith in order to make it that way. And I didn't get defensive. I just approached it from a standpoint of, wouldn't it be interesting if a division, not all of Lucasfilm, but just a division, focused like they are with Andor on multiple different groups of not just humans, but just species,
right?
And what it was like for them to go through the galactic war, right? From the beginning of Rebels to the end of Jedi. How interesting would that be if we all could see those various different groups and what it was like for them?
Yeah, I completely agree. Like, there's no reason, going back to that very first movie again, they're in that room, they're planning the Death Star attack. There's no reason why you couldn't pick a single face out of that crowd and say, hey, what was this guy doing, 5 years before this?
How'd you become a pilot? And
how did you become a pilot? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, how and why?
Right. There's no reason why you couldn't follow the cargo pilot story who all of a sudden became, the best X-Wing pilot in the fleet.
Right.
How he got there, where he came from, what his planet life was like, and so on.
What do you other guys think about this? Like this whole topic?
Wow, I have a lot to say about the Andor. So in the beginning, yes, I was thrown off by bricks and things. I mentioned last time the excavators and stuff like that, but the story was so compelling that I just didn't care about any of that. And like you said, there's sprinklings of Star Wars all throughout, in design. I asked myself after watching episode 6, which I love, by the way, if it didn't have the title Andor, if it was not Star Wars, would I be interested in it? Because it is a drama like most other dramas. It could be Firefly. It could be anything. It just happens to be Star Wars. And so I tried to, for a moment, take the whole Star Wars aspect out of it and just look at the story, the characters, design, acting, all that. And it's like, I hate to say this, but it's like any other drama out there. It just happens to be in this universe. And on the same token, now it's like I look at the movies, and Brian, I asked you earlier, now when you look at the original movies and the prequels, they all kind of the conflicts seem silly now in comparison to seeing a not necessarily adult, but a mature audience version of Star Wars. And you guys, you made me think for a moment. You say it's not necessary to have a Jedi or anything like that in it. Yes, and I agree. There's really no reason for any of that. But if they do put a Jedi or somebody like that in there, imagine how much drama that character is going to have and how different that character is going to be.
Yeah.
So going back to the topic, is this Star Wars? Well, definitely Star Wars. I mean, there's elements all around. I think Dennis, you said it. It was kind of odd. Episode, I want to say 4, when they were in Coruscant, we see a droid, an R2 unit, and you're like, the hell is that doing there? You know, it's funny that it kind of looked out of place at the time, which goes back to my earlier point, was that, you know, it could be any sci-fi, just happens to be Star Wars.
Yeah.
You see, I'm not so sure on that point. It's not like me to disagree with you, Ron, actually, because we're normally always on the same page. But this show, it is polarizing. And for me, look, there's so many things about Andor that I love. And by the way, spoiler warning, everybody, because we probably will touch on some stuff if you've not watched them yet. So just get that out there. But for me, I've had a lot of time to think about this, because it's just, honestly, it's just been on my mind every week. It's crazy how much this is consuming my thought space. But I think I see this as an adult Star Wars. So I've spent my life watching old Star Wars movies, which were essentially aimed at kids. I mean, George Lucas has said that himself. Okay.
Right.
When I was a kid and I watched Star Wars and Empire and Jedi, honestly, I found them amazing, of course, but some of the storylines and some of the politics and stuff, I found them a little bit complicated because I was a kid and I didn't fully understand that. Okay.
Yeah.
So Star Wars to me as a child is like Andor is to me as an adult, because although I understand Andor and things, what I'm getting at here is I spent my life watching or rewatching a film that when I was a child felt like an adult movie, but as an adult it feels like a kid's film, whereas Andor feels like an adult movie, which takes me right back to feeling like I did when I watched the first Star Wars. And that's why I think it works for me, because it's the first Star Wars I've watched like a kid, if that makes sense, if you know the point I'm trying to make. And in terms of what is Star Wars, well, I mean, we've talked about aesthetics so many times on this show, you know, Brian, you make a really good play on this in your videos about the visual message of Star Wars and the shapes it uses, and I've done similar things. I think we've all touched on that in our videos, you know. And you know, Roman, you were saying that you can take that out of it, and they have. It's there's little bits sprinkled here and there. I'm not so sure whether it would work for me. I don't think I would enjoy it if it wasn't in the Star Wars universe. I think because I know it's in the Star Wars universe, and I know eventually there's going to be like a huge Star Wars payoff for me, like there is. That's why I enjoy it so much, you know, and I think for me that's where it works. But in terms of the discussions and arguments that are going on out there about this, I mean, there's always arguments about Star Wars in the fan base, right? That's what we do. Well, I was going to say that's what they do. That's what we do, I guess. But
right.
Yeah, because we're part of that. But I think for me, it's about the definition of things. Okay, so I picked up. There was one of the comments on the Facebook group at some point about a junction box, you know, being lifted right out of it, you know, the high street or whatever. And I read through the comments and I said, yeah, and sheep. I was joking because there are sheep, aren't there, in it, and we've got goat herders. I think I said a goat actually, and someone said, "Oh, it is actually a Jacob goat or something that does have 4 horns for real." I haven't fact checked that yet. That might not be true, but maybe it is. I don't know. But when we're looking at it, right, you're looking at human beings with hands and arms and legs and heads and eyes and noses, and they're speaking English on the most part, and no one picks up on that because, well, obviously, you know, humans are actors and we need to be able to understand it. But it's like, wow, they've got the same word for spaceship, or they're using the same word for boot. Yeah, of course they are. Yeah. So actually, you know, when you define where people have an issue with seeing things from the real world, well, you see and hear it all the time. The trees, the forests, they're all trees and natives to Earth, right? But nobody tends to pick up on that stuff. And that's interesting to me. Why we therefore pick up on a man-made object. And I guess that's the difference. I guess it's where there's a man-made object, you know, the chances are, I guess, of a junction box looking identical in the Star Wars galaxy, that's what people are hanging on to, you know, whereas a tree, to be fair, that in my head, that's almost as impossible for a tree to look like a sycamore tree from Earth, you know, on the other side of the galaxy, or a long time ago, far, far away. Okay, so we've already established this is in our universe just by those words at the beginning of the movie, just a long time ago. So yeah, I think, you know, the question that we're asking is, what is Star Wars? I think Star Wars is whatever it means to you, and I think that's why everybody has so many arguments about it. I don't think it's one thing.
I think you nailed it perfectly right there. I'm going to interrupt you just because I think that's the essence of this conversation, is that the reason I think the reason they're attacking those things that you're talking about is that maybe they're not happy with the show, or not happy with the direction of a character, or even interested in a character, which is fine. You don't have to be. But we start to pick apart things to make logical reason why it doesn't belong in a space. Because I'm sorry, an Ewok had a tomahawk hatchet. Compare an Ewok's hatchet to a Native American hatchet, and believe me, they're going to look very similar to each other. So we're finding these little tiny things that we can stand on a podium or a soapbox and scream, this isn't it. But you nailed it. It's whatever it is for you. And I brought up in a post this week that I was like, you know, real personal to me kind of thing, that I compared to Star Wars to our favorite restaurant. So the four of us are going to go to this restaurant called Star Wars, and we all love it. But each of us are going to order a different dish from the menu, because there's different things we like. There's different, you know, it's just, that's the way we're going to eat together. But I'm not going to sit across the table and yell at James for ordering, I don't know, deep fried deviled eggs because they're bad for his health. It's just, it's crazy to me. And I can't get my head around that behavior.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I think the fact that we're in a time where there is so much Star Wars to choose from is a good thing.
Yeah.
You know, there is adult Star Wars, there is kid Star Wars, there is, you know, Andor is the novel, and Book of Boba Fett is the comic, you know, and that's fine, right? That's okay. But for me, I think, like I said, I think the thing that hit home for me was I feel like I felt when I watched the originals, watching Andor, not because of the bombastic effects and all of that kind of thing, but because of the fact that I'm drawn into the storyline, which I was as a kid in the Star Wars films. As an adult watching Empire or watching Jedi, I'm just enjoying the visuals and just say, this is a great film. Makes me feel like, you know, nostalgic and remember those things. But Andor, I find intrinsically interesting. I find the motivation of the characters, like when spoiler, but when Nemix got crushed by the credits, when Andor blasted upwards, you know, I physically gasped when I was watching it, like, oh my god, you know. And I thought, yeah, for some reason I care about every single one of these characters, and that's because of that drama that the Gilroy has driven into us, drip fed us for those 2 episodes of build up. And then boom, take that 3rd episode and slap that around your face, because this is going to make you care, you know. And I think I sent you guys a clip of I was watching it on my big screen again this evening, and my lad walked in and has not seen it yet, but he walked in that bit into the bit where they're escaping through the eye, and he sat down and he was just transfixed. He's like, what's going on? You know, because it's filmed in such, like we said last time, filmed in such an engaging way that pulls you in and makes you want to understand everything about it. And now he's going to go back and watch them all again, you know. And that is just, for me, that is such a refreshing time to be watching Star Wars. I get what people are saying. I get it, what they say about, it takes a bit of time, and it does. In fact, I was with Ron with the last episode 5. I found it a little bit blandor. Yes, that's a saying going around now, but I know why that happened. I get it, because they were still building to something, you know. And so what? It was a bit of a quiet episode. It was still a good episode, you know.
You know what? Too, I don't care if people don't like it. I'm fine with that. My frustration isn't with the people that say this is boring, or definitely kids that would be like, I can't imagine many kids are sitting there as excited as we are. What I struggle with is the anger and hatred that come out of it. I can't get my head around that part.
It's sad.
It is sad.
Yeah. When you guys were all kids, Were you worried that Han Solo was going to die?
I was worried everybody was going to have something happen. I mean, that's just the
Right.
nature of a movie. Like in this one, like most dramas, especially something like Game of Thrones, which this, is kind of like the Star Wars version of it.
Yep.
It's almost like you can't like anyone because you don't know if they're going to be there or not. I did not see that coming with the being crushed. And as soon as it happened, like you, James, I'm like, oh no, and you wouldn't have felt that way except that they've built up the actual characters.
That's it.
They made you care for these characters, good or bad or whatever
they raise the stakes
are. And so when something happens, like one of them getting shot and just being left there, you're like, but wait, or if a villain gets killed, like in Game of Thrones, hopefully I'm not ruining any of this for anyone, but like in Game of Thrones, everybody hated Joffrey. I mean, you hated this character. And then when he finally died, you're just like, wait, what? Now what? What happens next? And obviously there's far worse, you find out. But anyway, sorry if I, spoiler warning.
I mean, they've done that with all the characters, even the part with Skeen, right? Like, who saw that coming?
No.
Yep.
You're a liar if you told me
you
did.
If you saw that coming, then I don't know. But that was like total buildup, right? He seems like, all right, he's a little disgruntled here and there throughout the 3-episode arc, but he's the team player, right? He's keeping everybody in line. He's helping out. He's coaching. He's doing this. And then all of a sudden now he wants to flip the bill on everybody and take off with the goods.
And for that, he got Han Solo.
Yeah.
And that was when I asked you guys if you worried when you were a kid if Han was going to die, we all did, because the stakes were raised for us as kids. That barrier to entry is low. As an adult, we have to have more because we know more about the world to raise that stake.
That's it.
So like Dennis said, if that character had not, like his challenge with Andor and banging heads with them and the story about his brother, we got vested in him in a way that when he got shot, you were shocked.
In a weird way, this is totally Star Wars. It's the hero's journey with a ton of twists. Right?
It is.
And what I like most about it, in my opinion, is I feel like so far the group of rebel characters that we've seen are all treated like the hero. They all have their own journey, their own purpose, and then there's the twist.
They all have their own rebellion as a quote, right? From the film.
Yep. Yeah. I like how during the heist, it wasn't just about Andor. I mean, this was like a struggle for absolutely everyone. In fact, Andor was kind of just off to the side doing his thing. And you were like rooting for the entire team versus an individual. So I like how they played that.
So somebody pointed out to me that they were frustrated because it's called Andor, but it's not about Andor. And my response was, Andor is that's how we're getting to learn. That we're taking everything in from his perspective.
Right. This is the Andor's point of view.
Him.
Right.
But
totally
exactly.
about Andor.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one of Star Wars's main things. Everybody's point of view, right? They write books about everybody's point of view. They go back and remake a movie from somebody else's point of view.
After all, many of the truths we cling to are due to a certain point of view.
There it is, James. That's what I was looking for.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been written there since day one with the master himself has told us that, right?
Yeah.
I was just going to say that there was a really, really nice, well, there was loads of nice scenes, but there was one that I kept watching it and I thought, they're trying to tell us something here. And I think they're going to explore this a little bit more. It was when the natives and the Imperial officers were both viewing the eye, the celestial, the beauty, and the camera panned right, and you saw the lady crying, but you could see on those Imperial faces that they were, those actors were, I think, directed to play the part where it wasn't completely clear whether they were completely taken by it. It could have gone either way by their facial expressions, but I certainly took it as that they were all touched by that. And what was special about it was they were all stood on the mountainside together, natives, Imperial officers, just being human, right? And it's moments like that the show continues to get right, because it's the stuff that's not said that you think, it's like the DiCaprio gif, isn't it? Like we do that. It's like that.
I totally bought into what you're saying, and I'll tell you what led me to that. The card game the guard sitting on a chair. It's their jobs. These guys wake up, they go to work, right? They're done working, they go home. So when things like the eye is happening, or that's real life to them, right? What they're doing in uniform on the other side of the fence is a job.
They're not bad guys.
Right. They're not bad guys. They were hired to guard a depot or fly a ship or, join the army, for example.
And that's evident when and it happened twice where they're like, okay, call your loved ones. You're not going home tonight. We're all working late, and everyone's like, oh,
yeah, right.
Or those
you can relate to that, right? That's happened to everyone, hasn't it? Like,
or the troops that are told, okay, you guys are staying. Damn, it's like a double shift. I didn't want to do that.
It's just like James said. It's that little 3 or 4 seconds where they're showing that officer, and he's just looking up at the sky, and he's mesmerized with what's going on. That's real life. What he's doing in uniform outside of that, that's his job. He might like it and he might hate it, but it pays the bills.
In the behind the scenes footage for Rogue One, Garth Edwards, the director from that, he had talked about making Rogue One so that it appeared or showed that it wasn't just black and white, good and evil, but there were shades of gray all around.
Yeah.
Because those that are serving in the Empire, they may not necessarily be bad people.
Right.
It's your upbringing or whatever it was that got you to believe that the Empire was the way you should go, and that's what you serve. And I think you guys nailed it. That whole collection of those people, it leveled the playing field between all of them. We're all just human, whether you're a different species or not. It humanized it.
Humanized, right?
Yeah. Oh, man, that's awesome.
One thing for me is I like the way it uses plot devices to keep the story moving. So, for example, when Nemix gets crushed, then Andor's screwed because he needs numbers. He's shouting, he's trying to navigate through this eye. This is the main part of the plan. This kid is really important in terms of his skills with the Polaroid camera. Sorry, I mean the navigation device. Right. And it's like, it was so tense. I was physically getting stressed watching it. I was like, oh my God, what are we going to do? And when you think about it, this is a really teeny tiny battle. One ship trying to steal some credits and leave a planet, right? We have seen world-changing events in Star Wars time and time again that have, like you say, have a lot more high stakes than this. But honestly, they didn't mean to me compared to Andor and the team fulfilling that mission, and that's all because of what we've said about the way it's filmed, right? So and they do this, they use sort of steps. Okay, so he needs to be able to read the celestial movements, I guess, and give the appropriate navigation data. Andor can act on that and escape successfully. And if you trace it back all the way through, there's certain key points through all 6 episodes where one thing is relied on another, which that's a common plot device, I guess, in TV and movies, but it's very obviously done and done very well, I think, like the early Star Wars for me was.
I feel like it's also kept very discreet. It's not like the obvious rely.
Yeah.
As if it was like for, a regular TV show or a sitcom or something like that, where, okay, this is going to lead to this. And by the end, you can predict what's happening.
Their 3-arc series development is great too, right? We're getting this in 3 punches. That the first one sets things up, the second one gets you sort of invested, and then the third one is the payoff.
Yes.
So if they hold to that, I can't imagine they wouldn't. At this point, they've proven it twice.
Ironically, there's 12 episodes, and that works in 3s.
Is it ironic or planned?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I just think what you were just saying, Dennis, I think you kind of nailed it when you were talking about that. The plot device has not been obvious, but if you remember Mandalorian season 1, they did fall into a little rut where Mando had to do something to get to the next thing, and it became quite obvious. I think the first 4 episodes, I know you've got to do this first. I know you've got to take the eggs, and and it was kind of obvious. And I remember conversations, like random conversations at work, of people saying, "Oh, it's like, what's he got to do this week to get the story moving?" And although I love The Mandalorian, it's a great show. But it was obvious there that I think there's just a gulf between the storytelling in this series compared to anything else.
Yeah, I think the intensity of that whole scene in the ship, right? You sort of forget that you need Merrick to get you out of there, right? You're concerned with his injury, but you're totally forgetting that, oh my God, without this guy, they're not getting out. And then all of a
Yep.
sudden, they just put that little sprinkle in there where, oh, we got to get this guy up. He's got to get us out of here. It's
Yeah.
just, it's very,
It's got a mature feel to it.
it's there, but it's subtle. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. What are you guys? I mean, we've obviously all loved the 6th episode. I think that goes without saying, unless I'm wrong, but I feel like we do. I'm
I think
curious
so.
what each of you, what are you really hoping happens either in the next 3 or that caps this season off? Where do you want to be at the end of it? Is there anything specific?
For me, just hate to say this, but all-out war where the Empire is fed up. They realize that the rebels are a force to be reckoned with. Rebels are getting stronger and stronger, and just kind of leads us into what we know as Star Wars prior to Andor.
Yeah, I sort of agree with Ron. I think this is heading to where right now they're not so much being hunted as they're developing this rebellion. But I see it towards between now and episode 12, where it's going to turn into more of a Empire hunting rebel type scenario.
I think if you look at the cast in this, we've still got Saw Gerrera to come, right?
Yes.
So you know, in addition to Andor, he's the only other cast member that we have seen before.
I have a question about that, actually, because I was thinking about this as well. We do have Saw Gerrera to come, but as far as I know, Rogue One, Cassian Andor has never met or dealt with Saw Gerrera.
Yeah, they've got to keep them apart,
So
haven't they?
that's going to
Yeah, they have to.
that'll be something on its own, obviously.
I predict that Luthen will have a lot to do with Saw, because he's kind of like, you know, not building the team, but he's recruiting to some degree to get the people on the right track. Brian, what do I want to see? I want to see K2, man. I want to see K2SO. That's the payoff, right? Episode 12.
I want to see him, how they get him. Yeah.
We thought the whole of Andor was this one wonderful drama. No. It's all a build up for K2 to come back.
Yeah. I agree with you. I think there's certainly going to be, I'm expecting or anticipating that last, here's my opinion. My opinion is in that last episode 12, in the last 60 to 120 seconds is when he's going to liberate or somehow be in possession of him. I don't think we'll see K2 as we know him until next season.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that this whole thing is going to wrap up. I think the next 6 episodes are going to stay very similar to what we have, because they haven't rushed anything yet. There's no reason to suddenly be on everyone's radar. The development of the female Empire, I don't know what that role is.
Yeah.
She's part of that collection of intelligence officers, I guess.
Yeah.
The ones that are talking about their healthcare providers, which is the greatest analogy in history. I think we're going to see
the
her.
ISB.
Yeah, we're going to see her.
Took a minute to get it out.
I knew you'd come through.
The ISB.
I think we'll see her, and I think we are going to see the reinvigoration or validation of the lieutenant from the first 3 episodes that caused all the problems that had to go home to mom.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to get pulled back into this, and the climax is going to be basically the Empire realizing he was right, and he gets a better role, and that will climax into some kind of deadly thing at the end there.
Mm. Well, there could be a twist where he actually becomes rebel.
I thought that too, actually. I had that. I have that theory still.
Because he may feel like he's been crapped on from a great height.
Yes, and, I feel like he's in a very emotional place right now and can't decide what sandbox he wants to play in.
Yeah, and I think Gilroy is doing things that we don't expect, so maybe that would happen.
I
Who
hope
knows?
So. Yeah, good point.
But
good point.
there was one thing I wanted to sort of say though, because I think Ron, you touched on it earlier on about I think one of us said previously about the astromech droid that turned up, and it was like, oh, well, there's something from Star Wars. What's that doing here? The Imperials, okay, the way that they are showing those guys off, the suits, the outfits are like white. They're different. They're clearly Imperial officers. And I think, Brian, you said before, we haven't seen stormtroopers. And what is Star Wars? Okay, so if we take it back to, Star Wars is, you could say that Star Wars is Jedis, it's the Force, it's stormtroopers, it's Darth Vader, it's building a big round thing to destroy a planet, and then building another one to destroy a planet, and actually building an even bigger one to destroy
Building a
more
planet
planets.
to destroy planets.
You know,
Yes.
so is Star Wars about building spheres to destroy the planets? Maybe, but
Yeah.
I think what they're doing is almost, without the fan service stuff, is making, when it does happen, making it such a payoff. It's not in your
Yes.
face all the time, you know.
Right.
And you'll see the Imperial outfits are kind of opposite to what you've seen before with the
Yeah.
white, you know. And I know that we saw was it Krennic? He had his white suit on in
Yep.
Rogue One,
Right.
which is interesting. And then the office that they're in, or the meeting room, is completely un-Imperial like, but then at the same
Yeah.
time very Imperial like.
Yeah.
You know, it's like that contrast. And Coruscant, okay, we're seeing Coruscant at night, and if you look to the right hand of the screen in episode 6, when it was raining, that was Coruscant that you've seen in Attack of the Clones. It looked like it, but this side of the screen it could have been any street in London with rails and pavements and everything else, with just one hologram, I think, in the background. So it's very, very clever in what it's doing. It's giving you Star Wars, but no, it's taking that away, because this isn't the Star Wars you know. This is just a version of Star Wars. And I think what I was trying to get at earlier, Ron, when I sort of said about those sort of slightly different opinions on that, is if it didn't have any of those things in there for me, it would not be Star Wars at all. For me, it would just be, it needs to be in the universe for me, I think, to watch that. And those little reminders are perfect. You know, I'm not sure I'd actually enjoy the story as much if for me, I didn't kind of know where it was going. So, and I think Tony knows that. He knows the target audience, right? He knows who's going to watch that. And he's not a fan himself. Obviously, he's aware of it. He works in the industry, he knows the story, but that's important. And I think that's the key to what is Star Wars. And like we said it before, it is recognizable visually, and music wise. In Andor, there's zero reference to, at least I haven't noticed anything, zero reference to music that's come before, which, you know, for me is interesting. That's not bothering me, because normally I love the payoff when they bring out the Williams fanfares. You know, that's not happening yet. I got a feeling it will at some point. I think it'll be really special when it does. And I know that Obi-Wan did a little bit of that. They didn't do a huge amount of themes, but then all of a sudden, about halfway through, they used lots of themes. So yeah, I think the visuals are enough to keep you there, but they're very clever. They don't give you too much. And that's interesting.
When was the last time you guys crapped your pants, but because of a TIE fighter?
I know, right?
Right? I mean, they were intense, man. That goes along with what you're saying, James. Like, they've given us these little tiny bits, and then when they roll out something like a TIE fighter, it just felt intense. Like, really intense.
Plus, it kind of tied it all together too.
Excuse the pun.
Did anyone else notice TIE fighter pilots? Were they new to this? There's a lot of adjustments, and just like, shit, I'm trying to get this right. I can't even get this thing out of the hangar without all this extra stuff. I thought that was pretty funny. I mean, I know, I get it. You know, it gives to the intensity, like, will they get there in time or anything? But it just seemed kind of funny. It was they were clumsy.
But isn't that classic Andor? We can say classic Andor now, right? Because TIE fighters, but actually, we're going to show you somebody getting in one, which you've never seen before.
Because we never saw that.
Right. Yeah, you've never seen it hang. You've never seen the lid open.
Yeah, it's almost like Tony said, okay, I'm going to have to use a TIE fighter because this is a Star Wars show, but I'm going to show you how you get in it, because we've not seen that before, you know. And also, we're going to have a shootout with handheld lasers, and none of these sound like any blasters you've ever heard in Star Wars. They all have a different sound effect. It's like,
I have a question. How much of what is out there, as far as people, I don't want to say complaining, but, you know, this is not Star Wars, is not that, not understanding that a lot of this stuff is being pulled from an actual Star Wars source that you may not know of, like a comic book, like a novel, the ISB has been around quite a long time in books. We've never seen it in a movie up until Krennic.
Right. And then when we saw him, right?
Correct. You saw him. He was the first guy you saw dressed in white, right? He walked across the beach. You're like, whoa, what's that dude wearing?
Yeah.
But the Imperial Security Bureau has been around forever in comic book series. And they that's literally what they are. I think Brian may have said it earlier. They are the FBI of Star Wars.
Right. I think they're pulling from things like that, Dennis. They're going deep into the lore to give us new things.
Right.
And that I think that's why I get so puffy chested and angry when I see people complaining, because I'm thinking, well, you've been asking for new stuff. they came out with a sequel trilogy, and there was some great things in there. There was some bad things in there. There was some missed opportunities. And then everybody was screaming, just show me something new. So they came out with Mandalorian. Everybody loves it. There's a lot of fan service there. I get it. And it's a great show.
Right.
Book of Boba Fett comes out. Initially, people hated it. Then they said, oh, it's pretty cool. And there's like this whole mixed riff. Obi-Wan was all fan service.
Yeah.
This is something we don't know. It's brand new. So when they glob on to things like, well, what is the ISB? Or I can't believe they're using AK-47. It's like, did you look at the AK-47? Yes, that's what the body is.
Yeah.
But they have modified it slightly.
Right.
It's a guerrilla weapon.
Which is what they did in the original films.
Yeah.
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 Yes.
Ron,
I don't know.
the Imperial in the room. What's your take
Yes.
on how the Imperials are being sort of portrayed in
Great
Andor?
question.
No, I like it. I like it a lot. Even in Solo, you get a hint of how things are, with recruitment and stuff. I mean, it's an army.
Yeah.
You're going to have people from all walks of life, at least until the stormtroopers and all, as we know, they're taken as kids. And maybe this is why that is. This is what leads up to something like that, for people, for troops.
And let me ask you this: Did you notice the sets the Imperial sets were worn?
Yeah,
lots of scratches everywhere, right?
I'm going to talk to somebody about that. Don't worry.
Well, that's what I was thinking. If Vader turned up, or whatever, and walked through there, it was like, what the hell's going on here, guys? Who am I going to strangle today?
Yeah, exactly. Force chokes for everyone.
It's definitely like there's layers of Imperials, and okay, we're going to chuck you guys over there.
And I think it all leads back to them humanizing, right? Like the most important guy in the Imperial Army is standing in front of a mirror and his belt doesn't fit because he eats too much.
But think about where he is, right? So in the rank of Imperial, where does he fall? Is Darth Vader ever going to show up at that dam? No way. It's so far beneath him that he doesn't even care.
Right.
And that made it so much more interesting because it's like, oh, so the bottom of the ranks of the Empire, they basically have what they have.
Right.
Yep. Question for you guys then. So we talk about how this stuff doesn't look Star Wars. I never really checked, but how did people take Star Wars Visions, which clearly is just anime that's been altered to be in universe? Like none of that stuff was ever really truly made for, well, some of them were, but some of them were just clear anime and they just pieced it all together. And, I just wonder how people took that, because that was kind of far from Star Wars in some of them, right?
I honestly didn't watch them. It wasn't my thing. And I think that kind of proves the point a little bit, right? Is that Lucasfilm can make something that my nephew would like. He probably saw them, but I didn't. And there's no way he's sitting there and watching Andor with me. And if he is, he's not excited.
Right.
So it's kind of proves the whole, we're at the best restaurant in the galaxy and we're all going to get a different thing.
Different meal. Yeah.
That's your empire. Then you'll be forced to all eat steak and like it. Damn it.
Oh, I might join the Empire if that's the case, bro.
It all plays in. It's all subtle. It's there. It's Star Wars. You just have to open your eyes to see it. You've got your TIE fighter. You got your TIE fighter pilot. Did anybody notice the Cinto was carrying Greedo's gun?
Yeah.
Throughout the entire, it's all there. You just have to, it's there. And then there's real world sprinkled in, which I think just makes it fantastic. Because again, back to my point, we don't know what's out there.
Hold that point. I want you to answer why. I know why it works for me. I want you to, all of you guys, to tell me why that works. Why can you have real world things, not the trees and everything else we already talked about, but
right.
Why does that real world thing not bother you?
I don't think it bothers me because maybe it's just the way my thought process is on this, to where I feel like we haven't seen everything. I don't know what's out there. There's no reason why there can't be a brick building on a planet 300 light years away from here. Right.
What about you, Ron? Why, or does that bother you? I guess the real world stuff.
No, I mean, it's a little out of place and I notice it, just because we've watched all the previous Star Wars and there's just none of that. So of course, when you see something like that, it's going to stick out for a moment. You go, that's strange. But then as as soon as that enters my mind, it almost leaves right away because I just want to see what's going to happen next. I care about these characters. So no, it doesn't bother me.
What about you, James?
No, it doesn't bother me at all. And I've done a little bit thinking about this. And if you could find a bunch of historians to go back through history on Earth and looked at how cultures grew and formed when they were separate by oceans, which obviously back then, were we still coming up with the same solutions for things? Well, did we make a wheel over here? Hell yeah. Did we make a wheel over here too? Sure. Did they send an email to each other? Of course not. So I think because we're humans and we have our hands and our arms and whatever, all in the same kind of you end up, I can't remember what it's called. There is an evolutionary term for this where you just end up with the same solution. So okay, the chances of the body and of the AK being exactly the same as an AK, but I think they still do change the things. They just put a little bit of something on it here and then. For me, that's fine. Yeah. It works well.
My wife asked me that question, and I said, "Well, in Egypt they built pyramids, right?" She said, "Yeah," and I said, "They did it in Mexico too.
Exactly.
They're just a slightly different pyramid."
They did it in the first Star Wars movie. Right? They went to Tunisia. What did they change? They didn't change anything. They took Tupperware from London and put it in a building in Tunisia, and you got Tatooine.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
They didn't modify the buildings. They didn't do anything. They asked the people, "Hey, can we film here?" Sure, come on down.
Right? They took that one flight suit for the person in the cantina, didn't change anything.
Correct.
No, right? Yeah, nothing. Yeah, it's funny. I don't know.
Just before I forget, Dennis, jumping back onto that Visions point I was wanted to make earlier. So I couldn't watch them. Not because I hated them. I looked at them on Plus and I kept skipping through them. Now it got me thinking. I was looking for something, right? I was looking for a thumbnail or a look that I knew I would enjoy, and I found, I think, 2 episodes. There was one of the kid and the little droid and the ship.
Yeah.
For me, there was enough Star Wars in there. I thought, that might be quite cool. And I kind of enjoyed that one. The other stuff didn't interest me at all. I could tell straight away from the art style, it wasn't going to work for me.
Yeah.
So there must be something that I'm subconsciously looking for that is Star Wars in my mind.
I can totally agree with you. I can tell you I watched them all just because, you know me, I got to know names and places and all that stuff. So I watched them all, but there's so many of them that are just, even though there's a lightsaber battle going on or whatever, it's just totally not any relation whatsoever to a Star Wars.
Yeah.
Did you watch them, Ron?
I watched all of them and I thought the same thing. I was like, in the back of my mind, I kept thinking, what fan is gonna actually like this, and how much of a backlash will it receive for just not being, you just stuck the name Star Wars on there, changed the metal blade to a lightsaber, and you called it that's not it. It's not it.
Perfect example. Ron just said it. The samurai episode is the perfect example. The only thing in that entire episode that is Star Wars was a lightsaber. And even that wasn't 100% Star Wars because there was no ignition. It's already lit in the sheath. He pulls it out. It's already ready to go.
That's a hell of a sheath.
He's completely dressed like a 1930s samurai.
So when you ask the question, which is the topic, what is Star Wars? In my mind, that was not it.
But do you know what? Andor does do it more than any of the other shows. I think we've kind of, all agree on that.
Yeah.
And I think also they've used terms like year and hour as well, and weeks. And I'm pretty sure I would be gutted if they all of a sudden said it's Monday today, because Monday shouldn't exist in Star Wars. But when you think back through the other shows, there was a Mandalorian episode where he was taking the kid to that planet where's all the little blue fish and stuff, and they fight the Scout Walker. That village was kind of very un-Star Warsy, but at the same time very very Star Warsy. But I don't remember people kicking off at that point.
I was just going to make a point real quick. So, and I'll go back to the old movies. Everybody thinks that's Star Wars, right? You have Ewoks living where? In the jungle, in a tree, no technology.
Yep.
You have Coruscant, full of technology, full of greeblies, full of speeders, full of this. Well, what's in the middle?
Bricks.
Right? Bricks, excavators, junkyards.
Yeah.
Tupperware.
Mm.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
I'm not sure whether we are. Well, we knew we were never going to answer our topic question today because no one truly knows, do they?
We gave it our best.
What makes
Yeah.
Star Wars? But look, we came together and we tried hard, and we might have failed, but we've had a good conversation.
I think that's the point. We've had a good conversation about all four of us are diehard fans, and all four of us have different reasons why we're fans.
I have one overarching question though.
Yeah.
Is the Imperial's kid always poorly? Do you think so? I'm not so sure. And why did he not want to wear the Imperial outfit? And then he was wearing it, wasn't he? So, you know.
He doesn't like the job either.
He was gonna like it though. It's the back of my hand.
Exactly, yeah. Very Earth saying.
James, Jacob goat, real thing.
Is it? Have you Googled it?
Yeah.
Do they grow 4 horns?
Yes, sir.
Right.
That's a real thing?
And they called them a goat, didn't they? They used the
2
word
up
goat.
and 2 out the side. Yes, they did call it a goat.
Yeah.
Is that the kind that faints? Because those are hilarious to me.
No, those are
can't get enough
different.
of those videos.
A fainting goat is different.
Oh my God, those are funny.
You scream at them and they pass out. Yeah.
I have one.
That's
If you notice when they did the fur exchange also with the Downey villagers, they called it a goat skin. They only used the word goat the entire time.
It didn't bother me at all either.
No.
I was like, cool, they got goats.
Honestly, I didn't even notice it until I heard a couple of, some of the YouTube reviews I was watching. They're like, if I only had one complaint, it would be that they called a goat a goat.
Yeah, but haven't they been calling humans? Yeah. Anyway, we're only halfway through, guys. We got a ride ahead of us, and I think if you think about the first 3 arc, episode 3 was awesome. The second arc of 3 episodes, episode 6 was insane.
Oh, it was.
I can only imagine, and maybe they've made their job hard now, but I can only imagine just how this is gonna accelerate over time. And there was a little quote I shared with you guys today on Messenger about K2 and his possible involvement in whichever season. And Tony Gilroy himself said that when they do it, it will be done in the most amazing way, and it will be like a payoff. That wasn't his exact words, but he's saying you're not just going to put him there because he was in Rogue One.
Sure.
It's going to be earned, and I truly think that's the case.
Yeah.
But like everything else in Andor, we're earning it bit by bit.
Yep.
And no doubt we'll be coming together again as always to talk about this stuff. So again, have we answered the question? Completely, no, we haven't. Other than maybe saying Star Wars is whatever you want it to be. So go out there and watch Star Wars and just be yourself.
Yes.
Until next time, guys. Take care.
See you guys.